Yeah, Kevin. Well, first off, I just want to say my thoughts and prayers are still there for everyone who's been affected by these floods. Obviously, in my neck of the woods in Dardanelle and Yell County, we had a levee breach, which has led to some severe damage. But thankfully, the waters are receding, and we are praying for a couple weeks of dry weather, especially up in Oklahoma and Kansas, where a lot of this water originated. But it'll be many months of work to repair and recover all the damage that's happened. What happened last week was the second declaration the President made with Governor Hutchinson's request and our support in the Congress. That's the so-called Major Disaster Declaration. That frees up a lot more federal resources and funds to help communities and individual businesses and farmers and homeowners to recover from this damage. So if you're in an area and you've been affected by the flooding, please contact my office. You can give us a call. You can go to cotton.senate.gov. You can work with your local officials to find out what you might be eligible for assistance with. It may not cover all the damage. It may only cover once your flood insurance reaches your policy limits, but we want to make sure that you have timely and accurate access to the information that you may need to help recover, whether it's your home or your business or your farm or your forest from this terrible flooding.
Senator Tom Cotton, you mentioned the effects your home there in the Dardanelle area. In the River Valley, I mean, that's where my wife's family's from, too. Can you explain what happened there and just some of the damage and what you have heard about and what you may have seen?
Sure. The one reason why Yell County had some of the biggest hit was because a breach in the levee in Cardin Bottoms occurred. Those levees were either built by the Corps of Engineers or by local communities, sometimes almost 100 years ago, and turned over to local levee boards, which have been running them for many, many years. Some of them have fallen into disrepair, unfortunately, or they've been weakened by the ravages of time. When a levee like that breaks, of course, you have significant and heavy, high-volume flooding right in its vicinity, but then shortly beyond that, it just becomes kind of a slow creeping water. That's what we saw in Yell County. It creeped up to probably within just about a football field of South Dardanelle. Now, fortunately, it didn't reach the major populated area, but it did gradually and slowly flood all that farmland south of Dardanelle, made major damage to at least one hog farm that we know of, major damage to a lot of the roads that it flooded over. That water is gradually receding, but ultimately, whether water moves fast or whether it moves slow may make a difference for loss of life in the immediate term, but in the long term, it's just as flooded as it otherwise might have been.
Senator Tom Cotton on News Radio 102.9 KARN. You brought up a point about the levee boards here, and sometimes in places people don't know who's responsible for what with these levees. Is that anything that you take care of on the Senate level, or is that something there that is specific to the local areas that are involved in this?
Well, you know, it's something that I think we as a state ought to take a look at. Most of these levee boards are run exclusively by local officials. Some of them are, you might just say, are largely defunct. They have not had active participation. They don't have adequate revenue to do basic maintenance on the levees, like bush hogging and shoring up some of the earthworks. That's primarily going to be a state responsibility. The state has passed some reform measures in recent years, but probably could go a step further in terms of providing funding for some of these levee boards, getting them back on their feet with an actual fully occupied board. Now that can create some sensitivities, obviously, because local boards, just like local communities and counties, like to have control of their own affairs, but these levees are so vital to protect property and to protect life in our state. I think we ought to take a look at what we can do to revitalize all those levee boards.
Right. I know there's a lot of things that are happening on a national scale. I really wanted to focus local today on Arkansas and flooding and repairs there, and I appreciate your time this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kevin.